Millions of Americans spit into a tube and got results that were like 40% English, 25% German, 20% Irish, Scandinavian. Suddenly white had content, okay? Having German ancestry or Irish ancestry or Scandinavian ancestry means more than just saying you're white. It's about saying, oh, my ancestors have names and stories and places attached to them. They have a history. And it's like the whole American history of these distinct communities, specific struggles, inherited identities is just literally gone, and it's collapsed into a color. But America kept redefining what white was to include people, exclude people, slowly, sometimes begrudgingly, until eventually you have a lot of people who are now considered white. Hi, I'm Danielle Romero. Thank you so much for being with me here on my channel where we talk about American identity and family stories. And before we get back into the video, I would love to have you join me over at Patreon. Patreon.com/NYTN. I have videos up there, like no YouTube commercials. We can chat, we can direct message. I post documents there. Would love to see you. Or you can send me a coffee at coffee.com/NYTN13. Have you been told that you're white on forums, maybe in conversations? Maybe that's how you feel like the world sorts you. Maybe that's how the news refers to people that look like you. But if you've ever actually looked at your ancestry, if you've done the research, traced the records, found cousins, you know that the word is kind of a lie. It's kind of like an eraser. Your family's actual story is way more interesting than just white. This is the story of how America made you forget who you actually are, and how genealogy is the tool that we are using to reclaim our heritage. So stick around, because at the end of this video, I want to show you how to start finding your family story. I have put together free downloads for you to grab on my website to help you trace your ancestry and work you through that process, because you deserve to know who you really are. So in 1790, the new United States passed something called the Naturalization Act. I've done dozens and dozens of videos on this topic over the last 3 years. If you Google my playlist, Becoming American. But the Naturalization Act was important because we had this new country, and not too many years later, the founding fathers are like, well, what happens if people want to join? Like, how do we figure that out? How do people naturalize? How do they immigrate here? So the Naturalization Act said that you needed to be a free white man of good character. That's it. That was the gateway to citizenship here in the US. You had to be free, so you couldn't be enslaved or an indentured servant. You had to be white, and you had to be morally acceptable. And there it is, right? It's that simple, right? It's brief, but it's not simple, okay? It didn't say English, it didn't say German, it didn't say Scandinavian, it said white. Well, what country is white? The new nation needed a category that I think could stretch or shrink, depending on who they wanted to include or exclude. We're gonna get to that. So they used white. And so for a couple hundred years, that word has been doing heavy lifting here in America, collapsing entire worlds of culture, language, discrimination, identity, just squeezed into one color. And just on the flip side, I would argue that is true for brown and black. And guess what? They used to do yellow and red too, right? We said, no, those are, but we're okay with the other ones. So we'll get to that. Like a couple weeks ago, Ancestry DNA on Reddit, there was a post that was super interesting. It was a map that was North American counties color-coded by the most common ethnic ancestry in that region. And the comment section is really interesting. So I'm going to put the map up here while I'm looking at it. We can just chat about it. Okay, so the map says most common ethnicity of white North Americans by country, county equivalent. And so I just want to kind of take this in. It's including Canada too, but it's not including Mexico. I'll just go through this list first. So English is yellow, German is blue, green is Irish, orange is Scots. I think it would be Scots-Irish, Scottish. Don't believe those are the same though. Correct me if I'm wrong. Red is Italian, brown is Spanish from Spain, purple is French. Is that like puce? I don't know the color. Dutch. There's not a lot. So you see them up in Michigan. Dark green is Norwegian, pink is Portuguese, neon green is Finnish, gray is Polish, hot pink is Swedish, Czech I think is gray. Danish is kind of like a yellow, and cobalt blue I would say is Ukrainian. Okay, So looking at this map, I just want to look at this first before we jump into the history a little bit. So as you can see, it looks like most people, and again, I have to say, these are the breakdowns of white Americans. Okay, so that's why you're not seeing other things. This is saying people who would identify as white. Well, what are they? Because like that can be look how many things this is already here. Okay. And there's some interesting history here that I want to get to, especially about the Italians. But as you can see, most people are English or have English DNA. Weirdly, I had my Ancestry update, and terrible as always. Just kidding. But I have like maybe 25 regions or whatever, but no English at all. So it's interesting to me. No English, but English is predominant. Followed up by German. I mean, a lot of German counties. Irish. I do have Irish and, kind of Boston, New York area, a lot of that. Italian, it's strange. Also, I have a lot of Italian. And it's like, like everyone I knew in New York was Italian. But if you look at this, they don't really have as strong of a grip on the country as I thought, as you would think. But then you go down here, Miami, there's some Italians down there. Spanish, and I guess, Southwest area, Texas, bordering on Mexico. The history makes sense there, right? Spain. French, you see this huge, the upper right quadrant, so much French speaking people there. It's interesting because I went to Quebec when I was in college, I was in college and went to Montreal, and it was crazy. Almost everyone spoke French, and I was surprised by that. And then I came to find out, I think that French is one of the official languages. I think it's French than English. And let's see here. Dutch is real small. It looks like, I don't think that's called the Upper Peninsula. That's a Michigan thing, but I don't know but I know this is Michigan. Norwegian, that dark green. I see them kind of spread out through the Midwest here, like Nebraska. Portuguese is this pink. There's not a ton. California, it looks like. Finnish is this neon green just up here. And I did a video on the Findians, which is a really unique small culture of Finnish people who married the Native Americans in that area, and they're called Findians. So interesting to see the overlap of their cultures. Really cool to do that video. Polish is this gray, which is just, there's not a lot of people that are predominantly Polish. There were a lot in Western New York, but I see maybe one, right there. Hot pink, Swedish, again, Midwest, but not much. It's a sea of yellow and blue, which I don't have English or German ancestry, so I'm on the outs here. Let's see, Danish is this like yellow that I don't even know if I see it on this map. I'm gonna have to zoom in. And then this dark Ukrainian, I mean, that's not even the United States, that's in the Canadian province. It was interesting to see some of the comments. One user wrote, I was born in one of the pink counties. I am, in fact, 50% Scandinavian with 40% Swedish. Another person said that they have Lithuanian ancestors and they grew up in a Polish area, and people just assume that you're the same, but you are not. So here's the thing. If you looked at a standard US Census form today, all these people check the same box, right? White. And I just put a video out about ripping the census apart, basically going through the history of the US Census. But this map shows something that the census doesn't show, and that our cultural way of speaking does not show. Swedish people are not the same as Polish people, right? Polish people are not the same as Germans. German people are not Irish. And lumping them all together under white is like calling all of Asia just yellow, right? Like, and that was a thing people did, right? And then we wised up to that. And the Italians in particular, it's funny to see them being lumped in as white. I mean, I literally have a whole playlist talking about the history here. But very quickly, in 1924, my great-grandpa just got in under the change of law where they're limiting about like 99.5% of all Southern Italian immigration into the US because they said we needed to protect white America, and we can't have these Southern Italians coming in. It's muddying the waters. And so that was 1924. Here we are 100 years later, and now the Italians are just, boom, they're white. And I think that's very interesting. The law was even more brutal. when you wanted to become a citizen, because you had to prove you were white for a very long time. You want to be a U.S. citizen, you prove that you are white. And you had to argue your case in court. Between 1790 and 1952, there were dozens and dozens of naturalization cases, I've covered most of them, where judges literally had to look at a person and decide, is this person white enough to be American? They had to deal with cases for Syrians, Japanese, Native Americans, people from India. Each one was fighting in court for the right to be classified as white for citizenship. But America kept redefining what white was to include people, exclude people, slowly, sometimes begrudgingly, until eventually you have a lot of people who are now considered white. Invisible in their specificity, right? And the law changed when it became convenient to expand the category. Not because it really makes sense. The result is we have generations of people, at least 2 generations, okay? Because my great-grandparents on my dad's side, all immigrants. My mom's side had been in America since America was France and Spain and all of that. But the idea is that there are so many of us who really have no idea where we come from, all right? And it's like the whole American history of these distinct communities, specific struggles, inherited identities is just literally gone, and it's collapsed into a color. But that our story didn't just disappear. It's not totally gone. It's just underground. So starting in the 2000s, something changed. Ancestry DNA, 23andMe, all of these millions of Americans spit into a tube and got results that were like 40% English, 25% German, 20% Irish, Scandinavian. Suddenly white had content, okay? So here's what this map shows. It shows that America was built in layers. English settlers to the Northeast in Virginia, Germans settled in Pennsylvania, Scots-Irish, Appalachia region, Irish Italians to these Northeast cities. Each of these waves created certain ethnic enclaves. You may be married within your community. Then your kids married maybe just by their religion. So if it was Catholics, then you would have Italian people, Polish people, Irish people marrying, right? One commenter summed up it pretty interestingly. The Irish immigrants started marrying each other, and then their children married fellow Irish Americans or Americans with Catholic heritage, same with Italians. And so eventually, though, nobody gave a F and people just started marrying who they want. I think it was like a really good history of the assimilation in America. It happened at different speeds in different places. But here's what you need to know. You don't need an Ancestry.com subscription to start. You don't even need to take a DNA test. You can start right now with what your family already knows to kind of take the lid off what white is covering up, okay? So I have a free research worksheet. Actually, I have a bunch. It's in the description. It walks you through basic steps, okay? One is teaching you how to interview your oldest relatives. Questions to ask them. Literally print it out and bring it to Christmas, okay? You're going to start getting a lot of information. You could start looking for census records and follow the migration. Your ancestors didn't teleport to the United States, right? They moved from somewhere, like to somewhere, from somewhere, usually following a family or going to a community. That's where you see these county clusters on the maps. People grouped together, right, with the same language and customs. And so then if you have Ancestry.com or another website, you can hit those primary sources that I love. Go to the Library of Congress too. Ship manifests, naturalization papers, land records, church records, court documents. These are free on sites like Family Search. And obviously my favorite website, the Library of Congress. This is how you start remembering your actual history, how you start saving your history. So what happens when we keep erasing all the complexity and just insisting on using these color words? One, you lose your family story, right? You lose, I think, the specific hardships. You lose an understanding of the specific hardships that your ancestors endured to get you where you are right now. A Polish immigrant faced a different set of struggles than the Irish immigrant, the German immigrant. Actually, I've covered almost all of these on my channel. The jobs that were available to them were actually different based on that. The neighborhoods they could live in were different. It wasn't just like, oh, you're white, you get to live here. No. That's not how it worked. The prejudices they faced from other white people were different. So when you say you're white, you're collapsing hundreds and hundreds of years of specific histories into a category that emerged very recently to justify slavery. And I think that matters for how we understand ourselves now. And there's something else that the genealogy boom has revealed. The United States has actually never been white or not white. It's always been a spectrum. who gets to be white at any given moment. And I have the receipts on that. I've done this for research for years. The Irish weren't always considered white when they arrived. The Italians certainly were not. Over time, through immigration restrictions, intermarriage economic success, and honestly just the sheer passage of time, right? People became white. Or more accurately, the meaning of white expanded to include more people. But here's the real kicker. While European, what they would call ethnics, were moving up and into becoming white, people of color were still, we've gone over this, the vice squeezed more tight. The entire system was designed to erase some people and elevate others. And again, I've shared the other side of my family story, my mom's side, family from Louisiana, and it was a very different story. It was a very different story. This map is amazing. It's not just like this rando observation. These are big pieces, big puzzle pieces about migration and settlement patterns and belonging. It's evidence, right? It's evidence. And if you call everyone white, you're not really telling a story. You're kind of burying it, in my opinion. The genealogy revolution that's obviously happening right now is so subversive. For this first time in American history, regular people like us have the tools to prove our heritage in ways that the government never documented, maybe never wanted to document. If we have the technology to know where our ancestors come, why do we still use these categories that are designed to hide information? Why do we call people white, black, brown, yellow, red? Genealogy boom is not just about personal identity, in my opinion. It is about refusing to let your family story be erased. It's about insisting that having German ancestry or Irish ancestry or Scandinavian ancestry means more than just saying you're white. It's about saying, oh, my ancestors have names and stories and places attached to them. They have a history. And so, if you say, I'm an American with Swedish ancestry, instead of just saying, oh, I'm white, you're not being precious. I don't think you're being precious. You're being specific. You were Americans first, at least that's how I see it, wherever country you're from, like that's your country, right? But you're also honoring the particular struggles that maybe your great-grandfather faced as a Swede in Minnesota in 1900, and not lumping him in with maybe a Southern plantation owner who happened to have pale skin as well, right? I think this map went really viral because people could see themselves in it. They could see communities. They could see that Swedish isn't the same as Polish, and it's more than just being white. And I think that's the beginning of actually knowing your family story. So you could start that work today. I have these free downloads, research sheets, all kinds of stuff for you in the description. They're gonna walk you through how to interview your relatives, how to find these sources, how to read these records. And your story matters. It matters so much. And your family's journey matters. The specific heritage that they carried matters. That's how you got here, right? I think white was invented to justify a hierarchy. It was designed to be abstract, so it could be a tool for manipulation. But genealogy is a tool too. Oh boy, we got a sharp tool. It's a tool for specificity, for memory. I would encourage you to research your heritage and be a good ancestor. On my website, I have a lot of this stuff. And be a good ancestor. Being a good ancestor is preserving your family story and having something to pass down to the kids who come next. Thank you so much for being with me. We'll talk soon.